don't you just start with trying to be the best you?
Yeah.
Like, seriously, like, just show up and be your best.
Right. Well, and a lot of times people think marriage is 50-50, right? Listen,
100.
marriage is not 50-50. Marriage is 100 and 100. Watch it. Divorce is 50-50. You know what I'm saying?
Sometimes, unless you got a prenup.
There it is. Right.
Unless
right?
you're Dr. Dre and you just like, just take it.
Yeah, just take this
Get
150 million, leave me alone. But anyways, when we speak about marriage and being in those covenant relationships, it's 100 and 100. I'm giving all of me, you are giving all of you, and we are working in and through that. And the great news is that when she can give 100% of herself, I can give 100% of myself. What we can do, we can come and fulfill the purpose that we have been called together collectively to fulfill.
And
You can't change nobody.
you can't change nobody.
You cannot change people. Listen.
Stop it.
If you want to be together for a long time, please don't try to change that man. Please don't try to change that woman. Like, they were who they were when you met them, so do not try to change them, right? They were who they were when you married them, so please do not try to change them. The only person who can change somebody is...
You can change you.
Come on, somebody.
Yeah.
So please don't try to do something that you cannot do, because literally, if you're going out there and you're trying to change your spouse, that's going to become problematic, because your spouse going to wind up, bucking the system, because, and that's real.
I mean, you fell in love with all the things about them, period. So don't try to change the person that they are. Try to change who you are.
Try to change the person you are.
And be the change you want to see. Like, if there are certain behaviors, like, going on in the marriage or in the relationship, like, communicate, talk about it, work together to change, rather than just exerting your idea of what change needs to happen and your expectations on to somebody else. I mean, what's the little song? I clean up what I messed up and start all over again. The only thing that you can clean up the mess on is your own self.
True indeed.
You're the one messing on yourself. And you mess on yourself when you try to change other people. So, stop it.
Yeah.
Just stop trying to change others and embrace all of who they are, because your personality, we do personality profiling with people using the DISC assessment, Myers-Briggs. It's not wrong. It's who you are. And we are different, and we need to understand ourselves before we sit here and point fingers at other people.
Right.
We need to fully understand ourselves. And what we find is when we help individuals and or couples to understand who they are and how they show up, that they really have no idea.
Yeah.
They really don't. And so we're sitting here thinking that, our spouse is doing things intentionally to get on our nerves, this, that, and the third. Why does he do that? I've told him a million times. Why does she say that? I've asked her not to. Well, it's their personality.
Right.
It's not. Don't take it personal.
Right. It's not personal. No. At the end of the day, it's who they are. So instead of trying to take it personal and be mad about it all the time, let's figure out how we can work with it and how we can match our personality with their personality, so that there is no conflict or issue. Now, I'll go back to one of the things that you spoke about a second ago, especially with the DISC assessment, understanding your spouse and how they are wired and put together. That right there is such a critical. Right. I don't have to change you if I can understand you.
Right.
Right. Because if we really stop and think about it, the reason that many times that people want to change the other person isn't really because they want to change them. It's because they don't understand how they operate. And let me say this, because I don't know, y'all brought it in here, so I'm gonna say it. Quit trying to make another you.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Like,
you want to be married to you?
No,
it's
I
so
don't.
boring.
No,
he's like,
no, I really don't.
Married to myself.
I really don't.
I couldn't.
But seriously, quit trying to make that other individual you. Because when we're trying to change them, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get them to lean to our preferences. And at the end of the day, that's not bringing any kind of variety, and that's not helping the relationship at all.
Yeah, and a lot of times it boils down to the simple fact that you didn't do the work before you got married. that you should have done, and now you got to do it now. So you didn't have the tough conversations. You didn't communicate about the things you wanted, that you didn't want in marriage, and so now you're trying to change this other person when perhaps you could have worked on those places where maybe there was some incompatibility, you know, but Jesus, you know, he works it out.
He does.
Right? If you put the work in it, you know, but that's up to you.
Yeah.
That's up to you.
Well, I think it's critically important, especially in any relationship, that you work in the relationship.
It's work.
You have to be willing to put work into the relationship, and putting in work is not putting in work to change someone. Putting in work is putting in work to make sure that we can be the best together thing that we are, right?
Well, why don't you just start with trying to be the best you?
Yeah.
Like, seriously, like, you know, just show up and be your best.
Right. Well, in a lot of times people think marriage is 50-50, right? Listen, marriage is not 50-50. Marriage is 100 and 100. Watch this, but divorce is 50-50. You know what I'm saying?
Sometimes, unless you got a prenup.
There it is. Right?
Unless you're Dr. Dre and you just like, look, just take it.
Yeah, just take this 150 million, leave me alone. But anyways, when we speak about marriage and being in those covenant relationships, it's 100 and 100. I'm giving all of me, you are giving all of you, and we are working in and through that. And the great news is that when she can give 100% of herself, I can give 100% of myself. What we can do, we can come and fulfill the purpose that we have been called together collectively to fulfill.
And let's just face it, like, we're human beings. We're not always going to be 100. So that's why there's the 3-strand cord. That's why, you know, here we don't pull any punches. We believe that faith is a critical component and part of every relationship. So Jesus makes up the slack. When you can't give 100, you know, and your spouse is given what they can, Jesus comes in and he fills all the gaps between you. So in that commonality of your faith and your reliance on Jesus as your Lord and Savior, he steps in to help you.
I love that.
To bridge the gap between the two of you. And when you know your spouse is not at his or her best, you always, and we've talked about this a million times, we believe that you lend your strengths to cover their weaknesses. You always cover your spouse. Like, you know, one of the things that I always try to do, I don't speak, you know, I might be upset with my husband, but I don't put my mouth on him in front of people. I don't disrespect him. You know, if we're having any kind of issues, we handle it between each other, you know, at an appropriate time and all of that, you know, so give respect, you know, be loyal, be committed in that sense, because it's not going to do you any good.
And again, I love what you said. I just want to reiterate it. You have to cover your spouse. Like for real, cover your spouse. And that means in every which way. So as Carrie was saying, even if we got something going on, everybody else don't need to know that we going on. You don't need to call mama and them and daddy and them and your brother and them and your sister and them and tell your best friend them everything that's going on, because here's the thing. They're not in the relationship. So when things start going good, they didn't forget everything that you said.
And they're for you anyway. So it's like it's a fixed fight.
Yeah.
They're just your rah-rah.
Yep.
That's all it is. They the folks on the porch that cheer you on when you out there in the street fighting and the police pull up and you go to jail. And hopefully they post your bond. So that's what those folks are. You know, so don't get caught up in that rah-rah, but cover your spouse. And even to this extent, listen, you may see something that's going on. Go to God first.
Yeah.
Like, you may, like, ladies, you may think this is a common thing. Like, maybe your husband has an issue with pornography that he hasn't shared with you. And maybe that hurts you in a very deep place. Like, when you find that out, like, you take it personal. Don't take it personal, because the enemy wants you to take it personal so you won't pray for him.
Right.
You know, maybe it's a gambling problem. You know, maybe you find out that, you know, there's an emotional affair. Take it to God first. You know, get on your knees first.
Right.
So that you could take the personal out of it and allow the spiritual to begin to take over. Because I promise you, you will see a lot of those things just begin to change with the power of prayer. I mean, I go back and look at the beginning of our relationship, you know, and there were things that I was just like, I could see things in my husband, and I was like, you know, Lord, help him, you know, because I was like growing spiritually, and I just wanted him to be able to be walking alongside of me. But I was further along. There were some things and some ways of the world like he didn't want to let go of.
Yeah, she was growing spiritually. I was growing in Hennessy and Black and Miles.
You know,
it's just
there's
being
that.
real.
So he said it. I'm covering him. He uncovered himself.
Look, that's just being
he
real.
pulled the covers all the way back.
That's just being real. But I say that because there are people right now who are having, you know, having challenges.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That they got things that they think that they're the only one. They're the only one. But I promise you this, because my wife went to prayer first, into the prayer closet first, and was not beating me up over the head, telling me, you know, what I should be doing and why I should be doing this. And, you know, like literally, she didn't come to me to try to change me. She went to the prayer closet, and when she got to the prayer closet, she began speaking to the Lord, and it was the Lord who was able to minister to me, and he brought the change,
and
right?
that's change. When the Lord brings a change, it's sustained change.
Yes.
You know, he had some nice feet in that season, because that oil sure was slap up in his shoes. I didn't even know what I was doing. So, like, look, if you don't, like, I don't even know how to pray, just pray. Like, whatever you got to say it to the Lord. And you know, the last thing that I want to say, what we're not saying is that you keep your issues a secret.
Right. Okay.
We're saying in the right time, you need to go to the right people, and you need to have godly counsel.
Yes.
Everybody needs counseling at some point in time. There's no shame in that game at all. That's wisdom right there.
And it's healthy.
It's very healthy.
Yes.
You know, whether it be, you know, it doesn't have to be someone certified. It doesn't have to be someone like us. It could be maybe friends that you have that you admire their marriage. I guarantee if you dig, there's dirt, but they probably will share it with you.
Right.
You know, so seek that. Don't keep it. Secrets will eat up a marriage.
Yeah,
you know, a lot of times we just sweep things under the rug until we end up waking up one morning and tripping over it.
Yeah.
And Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and all the king's horses, all the king's men couldn't put Humpty back together again.
That's real.
What you got next?
That's real.
Number 3.
Number three is this. You got to learn to communicate, right? Communication is the key and cornerstone that every relationship is going to be built on, right? And here's the thing. If you can effectively communicate in your relationship will succeed. Watch this. I guarantee if you cannot effectively communicate with your spouse, partner, your relationship, it is going to fall apart, because communication is literally the foundation and bedrock on which that relationship and everything else is going to be built. So you have to learn how to communicate to your spouse. What is their love language? How do they best receive from you? What are things that, you know, you should say and maybe you should think about not saying, right? How are they going to literally receive from you? Because if we're not getting into the I don't know, the ins and outs of really understanding that, it all it does is it's going to cause problems. So we have to learn how to communicate. And I'm going to say this, one of the best ways to learn and understand how to communicate with your spouse, watch this, is to ask them.
Ask the question.
Ask the question.
And I would say second to that, because there's more said in what's not said than what's actually said. Now, that's a riddle, but they that have ears, let them hear what the Spirit of the Lord is saying. No, more is said in what's not said than what's said. So more communication happens in just listening.
Right.
You know, I think sometimes we don't slow down. Life is busy.
Yeah.
Well, I think we busy ourselves up with a lot of trivial things. We could really have more time, but that's a different show. But you need to listen. Like, body language is talking to you. You know, if you're feeling some kind of way, and I've said this before, like, be in tune to how you're feeling, and maybe you don't know why you're feeling that way. If you're feeling like a disconnect from your spouse or whatever, there's something going.
Right.
Like, be in tune to that, you know, and then begin to just watch and observe and see what you see. And then after you gather that information, then go ask them.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, I noticed this. What, you know, you want to talk about what's going on? Or, you know, instead of the hollering, the fussing, the carrying on,
Right.
the pointing fingers, the accusing, those sorts of things
Right.
that we resort to many times.
And, it's interesting, especially when we think about communication. There are some people who want to have conversations immediately,
Yeah.
right? They see something and immediately they want to deal with it. And I get it. They don't want things to fester. They don't want things to to be able to grow and I get that and understand that. You just have to be careful to make sure that your spouse is okay and ready to have those conversations, right?
Ask.
Because if they are not ready to have that conversation at that specific time, then that could wind up becoming detrimental, and there you both go.
Yeah, you need to agree to the parameters.
Right, and that's really where I was going. So sometimes you may need to take that 20-second time out. You need to say, listen, we're going to talk about this, but right now I'm not in the space to have this conversation. Let me, go for a walk. Let me go for a run. Let me go work out. Let me go for a drive. Let me get myself together so I can be in the right space so we can have this conversation. Because what you don't want to happen, you don't want to we see this all the time, man. Couples, they're arguing because the mouse is not working. I just see the mouse right there, y'all. The mouse is not working. And then that leads to, you didn't wash the cup, which led to 3 years ago, you didn't get the right phone, which led to 10 years ago, you dropped the keyboard. I'm making all this stuff up right now, as y'all can see. But my point is, because you're not in the right space, it just goes and spirals out of control, right? So we got to get to the place where when we're communicating, we learn how to communicate, the best way to communicate, and also it's critical to understand from a time perspective, what's the best time to be able to communicate with your spouse or significant other.
Yeah, and the last thing I just want to add to that, a lot of times we see our spouses perhaps making wrong decisions or things like that for maybe our household or whatever, and I would just say to that, yes, women are supposed to be submissive, but if you saw a man about to walk off a ledge or a woman, would you not say anything? Or would you say, hey, there's a ledge over there? Some of us are gifted in certain areas, and there's a reason why God gave us these giftings, and they're to be lent specifically to the first relationship that God ordained you to have, and that's your marriage. And that marriage is then for ministry, and that's the next place that your giftings are for, so that they can go out into the world. But anyway, so, you have to speak up, but you have to go through those three, the three parameters there that you just outlined. But it needs to be respectful, and at the end of the day, you all may have to agree to disagree, but you need to come to a level of agreement with whatever it is. We're all going to differ in our opinions. So
I would definitely agree with that. But again, if you have never talked to your spouse about communication, again, we would challenge you to have that conversation and just simply ask them, listen, what is the best way that you receive communication? Or what is the best way that you would like for me to communicate with you? Would you like immediate communication? Do you need space? Do you need some? But literally have a conversation and ask your spouse and have that conversation. I think that in and of itself, that will help tremendously.
Edge life, you're too close to the ledge. We gon' push you forward a few steps ahead. It's that edge life. Oh, gotta get it in your head, baby. Welcome to the edge life. You're too close to the ledge. We gon' push you forward a few steps ahead. It's that edge life.